Welcome to Adapted, the podcast where we explore adaptations of various forms. I'm today's host, Tom, and with me is...
Ah. Before we begin, I
Yeah.
just want to mention, okay, that we just had my wife just gave birth to our first daughter. So we have two sons, and now I have a daughter. And this podcast helped to name her. So I just wanted to throw that out because based on our conversation with when we did Much Ado About Nothing, we named her Beatrice.
Oh.
So I wanted to throw that out there. That's a life-changing moments for that poor child.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
So yeah, now on
Now
to
we're going.
yeah,
Yeah, she is 2 weeks old now? No, 1 week old.
uh, 2 weeks
Two
tomorrow,
weeks, 2
tomorrow.
weeks.
Yeah,
Okay, 2 weeks tomorrow. Very good. Well, welcome, Beatrice, our little Bea.
yeah, Lady Beatrice.
Lady Beatrice. All right. So I thought today I'd look at something that's kind of interesting, which is, I don't know, do you know about this, Pat? Restoration adaptations of Shakespeare.
I've heard that they did like things like that, didn't they? They would like cut them and they would kind of splice them and do stuff with them, but I don't know that much about it. I thought they did that more in the 18th century, but yeah,
They did
like
it
they
in
would cut out all
both.
the naughty bits. I thought they were like cutting out the naughty bits at certain ones of these things. Like,
They were more interested, so it's a little bit. It actually became a thing. They're not really that interested in cutting out the naughty bits because their plays themselves are
well,
actually
not in the
far
17th century.
naughty.
Yeah, not in the 17th
Yeah,
century. Yeah,
a
I've
little
seen
bit.
she's a 'tis a pity she's a whore. That thing
Yeah.
is,
Well,
good
tis
Lord.
pity she's a whore is 1630s, I
I
believe.
thought it was like 40s, but either way, yeah.
Maybe 40s. Well,
I
42
don't I
is
don't know. It could be.
nothing after
Oh, okay.
42.
So then it must be 30s, yeah.
Yeah, it
But I
must
mean,
have
that is a risque play by
been.
modern standards
Yeah.
too,
There's a lot of brother sister lovin' going on in Tis Pity She's a Whore. If
and very like not subtle, like very
yeah.
very very graphic.
This is the John Ford who didn't direct Stagecoach, if you're wondering. But look that up. Tis Pity She's a Whore. The title is funny, the play is not.
But
Um,
it's horrifying.
yeah. But anyway, so I was researching Antony and Cleopatra. I was looking it up, and there's an adaptation of it called All for Love from 1677 by John Dryden. And it's, yeah, and this doomed version of these lovers became really popular in the 18th century. It was far more popular than the original, and it was performed over 120 times. The original, once Dryden made this adaptation, the original Antony and Cleopatra did not appear again until 1813. Um, However, this transformation Dryden did was not his own invention. Between 1660 and the end of the century, Macbeth, The Tempest, Lear, Much Ado About Nothing, Taming of the Shrew, Richard III, and a number of other plays of Shakespeare's were rewritten and remounted for restoration audience sensibilities. So, if you know
So
anything,
it's not just Disney.
no, it's actually
That's what I think
interesting.
is fascinating.
Yeah,
It's the
Disney
same thing it's the
seems
same thing everyone is like trash at Disney for lately. Like they were doing this 300 years ago.
Yeah, no, this is not anything. This idea that Disney is like remounting all their old stuff or reworking it for modern sensibilities
They
is
did it then.
exactly what the restoration was doing. It is exactly what the restoration was doing. So if you know anything about this period, 1642 to 1660, there's no new plays because they're made illegal by Parliament. And so when Charles II comes back in 1660, he issues two theater patents to Thomas Killigrew and William Davenant. Killigrew was very smart and somehow acquired the rights to all of Shakespeare plays. And this became a problem for Davenant because there were no new plays, so you had to grab the old stuff. He ended up negotiating about 10 Shakespeare plays, and he got them. But he felt, Davenant did, that Shakespeare was kind of old hat. He was an old man. He wasn't revered as a god the way we do today. And so he started to make some changes. And it's interesting, if you see reviews of plays back then, Samuel Pepys is one of them. He was very critical, Pepys was in his diary, of Romeo and Juliet and Midsummer, which he just thought is ridiculous and stupid and silly.
Okay, so we agree at least on the
Romeo and Juliet.
Julia, because like it
Yeah.
is ridiculous and stupid in a bad
Yeah.
way.
Um,
Hey, I'm glad.
yeah, you go. And there's actually another really good record. John Downes, who was the prompt book operator, he's the guy who ran the prompt book for Killigrew. He kept a record of everything. And so he was sort of the Henslow of the Restoration, or the early Restoration. And he knew, like, the original Shakespeares were not popular. People weren't going to them. And so Davenant, who's incredibly interesting, we should talk about William Davenant at one point. He's one of the greatest, and he might have invented the musical. You could credit him with inventing the musical. His
Hmm.
son Charles,
Blame him with
blame him for crediting the
You mean
musical.
blame him with
Yeah, his son Charles might be one of the inventors of economics. Interesting,
Oh
interesting
God,
people.
this family is getting worse.
Pat wants to go back in time and kill them. It's like you could go back in time and kill the Davenos or Hitler, and Pat's like,
I
uh.
mean, I probably would still pick Hitler, but if I could get two, I might go, I might get the Davidos.
Yeah. So in any way,
Music, if
16,
I could get rid of the musicals and economics, my God.
we would be an
No,
easy
so with
street.
it just reminds me like we could come back and it would be like when Lionel Hutz imagines a world without lawyers. And they just show everyone dancing and singing like in a circle. Yeah, that's what it would be
Yeah.
like.
So Davenant, anyway, 1662, so right out of the hatch, he creates the law against lovers, which is his combination of Measure and Much Ado. With Angelo, the evil Duke, and Benedict were now siblings, and
Okay. I
the
mean, it's a
the Duke,
mashup. Yeah.
it works. The Duke
This is
is
like Batman meets Superman. Like that's essentially what he's
Justice League.
doing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
whatever. Whatever,
1662,
not
Davenant
Batman.
wrote the
Whatever
Justice
they
League.
are. Yeah,
Yeah,
he wrote
yeah.
the Justice. Yeah, basically he's combining these things. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah.
But in that version, and this kind of speaks to why they're adapting it, the Duke is just testing Isabella. He's not actually trying to sleep with her, which is kind of a bit of what they were going for. There was a bit of a virtue signaling going on with this. So Disney is nothing new. There's this like they were trying to show how actually this is a really bad thing. They liked ribald content, but they didn't, for whatever reason, like that sort of threat. They didn't want that. Beatrice also has a little sister named Viola who sings and dances. And that version itself was readapted by Charles Gildon in 1699. And in that version, the epilogue is spoken by the ghost of Shakespeare, who is now a
Wow.
character in Measure for Measure. And Davenant's version is interesting because one thing we should know about 1660, that's the year women can start acting. Charles guarantees it. His lover was one of the first big named actresses. She actually was the first named actress to appear on stage. And so a lot of these people just started adding in
What about
women
Gwyneth
roles.
Paltrow?
Yes, well, yes, well, named actress. There actually was one actress before her who we knew about, but we don't know her name. And so in 1660, we start to see women, and so they start rewriting these Shakespeare plays, but just adding women's roles in. And they also started to have a little more money. They started having indoor theaters as opposed to outdoor theaters or, Blackfriars, which really wasn't initially supposed to be a theater. And so you had special effects. And so they started adding, like the witches can fly now. So they had flying techniques and whatever. And yeah, so you start to see like a lot of songs, a lot of dancing, a lot more women. So having like Viola, who is a woman and can dance and sing, checked a few boxes for their kind of needs as they're going on. They also simplified the language. They didn't like Shakespeare's complicated metaphors and whatnot. They thought that was kind of over the top. And so you see a lot of changing the language to kind of simplify it with better modern techniques and all of that. There's a great one with Dryden and Davenant teaming up to write The Enchanted Island, which is their version of The Tempest, which included Hippolito, who is a man on the island who's never seen a woman, Dorinda, a second daughter of Prospero, which then she marries Hippolito. You also have like Ariel has a girlfriend named Milcha in that version, and Caliban has a sister. And Caliban's mother is also alive and wandering around the island too. So there's just throw a bunch of women in. Um,
It's like fan fiction. Just reminds me of like
it's yeah, it is, but
17th century fan
it
fiction
is,
almost.
but it was like far more popular than the original. That was also made into an opera by Thomas Shadwell. There was the very famous from 1681 Natum Tate's Lear, where Lear lives. He gets his throne back. Cordelia marries Edgard, and it ends with "Truth and virtue shall at last succeed," which is Edgard's closing line of the play. There's about 50 of these between 1660 and 1777. And around 1777, it just kind of stops. And there was a big question as to like, well, why did it stop? And the original hypothesis was nobody really liked Shakespeare. They thought he was hack, and they just changed things. But one scholar who was my advisor, so I know it a little bit, my doctoral advisor, her work, Jean Marsden, I should say her name, was basically to show that actually no, they really liked Shakespeare. They Dryden wrote about how wonderful Shakespeare is. Samuel Johnson was the first Shakespearean critic in any kind of modern sense. He was an 18th century writer, if you don't know Dr. Johnson. Uh, they just thought he needed to be adapted to modern sensibilities, and they were really suspicious of anybody who was too clever with words after the Civil War. Like people who are really clever with words, they were pretty dangerous. They kind of screwed things up. We need to simplify their language. And then the other things too. They need more women because then they had a bunch of female actors. They don't know what to do with them, etc. And so they wanted to clarify things for contemporary ears so that nothing too dangerous got out there, nothing that made anything too unstable. But what ended up happening was later in the 18th century, print got really, really, really cheap, and people got more prudish. And it was actually people started to dislike the kind of restoration comedies, which were, if you don't know them, they're sex comedies. They're like very, very ribald. There's a lot of sex going on. And so with this kind of general hatred of the restoration and the fact that they could actually people could read Shakespeare on their own, and they would. 18th century circles would have reading circles and you would read Shakespeare plays. They started to come up with this kind of idea of like Shakespeare isn't just a really good writer, he's a sublime god.
Yeah.
And that this idea of like the great genius who's like his plays are sublime, and what that means is not only are they really really good, but they're so good merely their art will make you better. That became kind of a concept in the later 18th century. And so combined with everybody can actually read these things now, or people with some means can read these things now, and we really don't like them back in the Restoration because they were too sexy, they were too into that type of thing. And this idea of, well, if we read the original genius god Shakespeare, we can all become actually better. That kind of pushed out these Restoration things. And what you see is that people started just to take seriously the original Shakespeare and, in fact, demand the original Shakespeare. However, we still have remnants of the Restoration today. And even in this podcast series, we actually touched on one. I didn't realize this until I was looking this
Which
up,
one?
but in Laurence Olivier's Richard III, at one point his Richard III says, "Off with his head. So much for Buckingham." This is not a line from Shakespeare, but in fact from Colley Cibber,
Oh
who wrote the
gosh.
line for his adaptation of Richard III in 1699. So that
Huh.
has, yeah, that is not Shakespeare, that is Cibber, um, who also helped invent celebrity. If you ever read his autobiography, it's very interesting. But there you go.
Can I throw in my favorite anecdote from this time period?
Please, yes.
Okay, so my favorite anecdote is I don't remember the name of the dude, but he was like a guy, he worked in the theater and he came up with like different sort of special effects things. And he came up with apparently it was like really good, but apparently it was like I think he patented or at least attempted to patent whatever the patent was available at the time. But he came up with like a thunder machine so that like they could have storms and they could like have basically make a thunder sound effect backstage. And apparently it never really took off, and he never really made any money off of it. But then a few like 10 15 years later he was at the theater and while he was watching the show, he heard his someone had apparently like used his thunder machine for their backstage effects. And so he came out and was storming all around going, "They stole my thunder." And that's the actual origins of that phrase. I'm not joking. That's the origins of that phrase. To steal someone's thunder is because of this dude who was bitter that his backstage effect in the early 18th century was stolen.
Yeah, so steal from someone's thunder came from a literal stealing
Did you
of
know this
someone's
one? Did you
thunder.
know this one?
I had heard that anecdote before. Yes, I had heard. I think maybe you have told me. That's
Okay,
why
maybe. I just think it's one of my favorite anecdotes.
it's a
And I
good one.
don't
Yeah.
care if it's not true.
Yeah, no, I know.
I
I never looked it up. I think
don't
because I'm like,
care if it's not
I
true.
think I'd
This is the
prefer
big fish.
this
This is the
story.
big fish world. I
Mm.
prefer to live in a world where
It's
this is true. Because it's so good, it's
mm,
just so good. And if it's
I know.
not true, I don't want it. I don't want it to not be.
Yeah, like the word queer being, I bet I can
Oh,
invent a
I
new
love that. Yeah, I've
word.
heard that one. I've heard that story. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna
Why
put.
don't you tell that one? Yeah, the word.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. So supposedly in the 19th century,
yeah.
was
It's
it?
like this sounds like a 19th century philologist kind of thing. This is basically
Yeah.
like an early version of Doctor whatever his name is, the one with the Liza. Where am I?
Oh,
What's his
right,
name?
right, right. Shaw's Pygmalion
Yeah,
guy.
Pygmalion, yeah, whatever his name is. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like an early version of
Mm.
that. It was like a bunch of philologists supposedly like getting together on word origins or something. Yeah.
And so the idea was the guy's like, I can invent a new word. I know how I'll do it. I'll just write it everywhere. And he started writing the word queer everywhere because there was no word for that. And eventually people were like, oh, that's really odd. This word is written everywhere. And so it meant something odd because it was in all of these places that were odd. And they're like, well, this is odd. It's queer. And that's how that word meant something odd. Which is not it's preposterous, but not quite as preposterous as okay.
Isn't that old Kinderhook?
Old Kinderhook, yeah, yeah.
Right? That
That
is true though,
that's
isn't it?
no,
It's
there's no
not?
way
I
that's
don't know.
true. Yeah, I mean I've heard that story too. There's no way that that is true. That comes from Martin Van Buren.
Yeah, I'd always heard it was from Martin Van Buren.
Yeah,
It's not.
I'm pretty sure it is not. I'm pretty sure
I don't
okay
care. I'm going to
predates
live in a world
where
where
that's
the
true.
okay
So,
comes from
ladies and
Martin Van Buren.
gentlemen,
Martin Van Buren during was known
okay.
as Old Kinderhook.
Yes, he invented it in 1836 when running for president. That is definitely a fact. If your teacher says
The
it's not,
the point is we all need some whimsy. and And maybe we have a little bit too much focus on just making sure that these things are accurate.
yes,
Because before the internet, you just assumed that they were, like the dude peeing on the railroad track getting electrocuted. Like that just was what the story was, and we all accepted it. And it's such a shame that, now we've lost all of them because of Wikipedia. So I'm keeping them.
yes. We will, on this podcast, we preserve myth as truth. That's it.
All right, Antony
So
Cleopatra.
speaking of myth as truth, here is Cleopatra, Antony and Cleopatra, the last, I think, of the Roman plays of Shakespeare. I
Probably.
believe so. Yes, I think Coriolanus is
Yeah, I think it is.
earlier.
Yeah, early Curly and Linus, yeah. So I don't think anything's coming after it, so.
No, so here we are, the end of the line for Mark Antony. I would say I like this play because I think along with Julius Caesar, and this may be a point we disagree on, I think it reveals the problems and affordances of the transition to empire. And I think it works really well with Julius Caesar. And I think it does that at the geopolitical level, but I think it also does that at the personal level. This is not some grand political statement Shakespeare is making. It also bubbles down to can something bubble down? It boils down to the individual.
Trickles down. I mean, if
Trickles down is what I
we're going
meant.
with Reagan, we're gonna go
Yeah, yeah.
trickles down.
It trickles down to the individual person. And I think that's what I found so compelling about this. Initially, this is actually the first Shakespeare I ever read as a little kid. I think my father had a leather-bound edition of the complete works, and I read Antony and Cleopatra. I don't know why that one. I think maybe because I hadn't heard of it, and I thought I'll read the Shakespeare I haven't heard of just to be a jerk or something. But so this is the first one, and
So
I
you were
think
familiar with Cymbeline, but You're familiar with Timon of Athens.
Yeah, I'm all
Good
too
luck.
familiar with Timon of Athens now.
This is true. As one of the only human beings on this planet who has been in two productions of Timon of Athens, Tom is an expert on that show.
Yes, yeah. But anyway, so I always found this to be pretty intriguing. I think Cleopatra is particularly interesting in the kind of tradition of great women that Shakespeare's created. This time around reading it, I kept paying attention to Antony and Lepidus and Octavius and how they are sort of dealing with this new world they are both inheriting and creating. And I think that's what I found very compelling about it this time around. Um, Antony's an incredibly frustrating character. He is such a hero in Julius Caesar, especially how when we covered him with Marlon Brando playing him, and he is such like a soft man. He's so
Yeah, well, that's what's supposed to happen to him.
collapsed.
That's
Yeah.
clearly, yeah, he's that's what's clearly going on here.
Mm.
I disagree with your assessment of because I the way I read this is that because there's a number of lines just in the text that suggest that that I think he's meant to be a failed Aeneas, that he's meant to be a person, and I agree. In Julius Caesar, he's a hero. You're meant to see him, and this is his like that's his Troy moment. And then I think he's meant to go. I think the idea here is that he's meant to go if he follows his what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to marry Octavia, and then because history knows Octavian Augustus Caesar produces no male children that survive into adulthood, and so if Mark Antony fulfills his role properly, he will marry the admittedly cold Octavia, and they will produce sons, and that will be the foundation of the new empire. He's meant to found a a, a line. He's meant to found an imperial line. And that I mean it's never stated that directly, but that's what should happen if he fulfills his duty. In the same way that Aeneas, who does fulfill his duty, Aeneas has to leave Dido. He does. There's a number of things that are really clearly paralleling Aeneas's departure from Carthage when Antony does actually leave Cleopatra. There's a number of things that just strike me as clearly paralleling, like the fact that he tries to sneak away, and there's all this stuff that seems to be directly lifted from the Aeneid, and he goes and in the Aeneid Aeneas leaves Carthage. He goes to Italy and he marries. I don't remember what her name is. What's the queen? What's the one he
I
marries
don't
there? Do you remember
remember
her
at
name?
all. It's
Whatever.
been a while.
Who cares? Then she's literally there for no function other than to be married. But so he basically eventually he defeats he defeats the Latins. He becomes marries the queen, the princess, and becomes the king and this whole thing and founds the Roman people. That's his role. He's constantly told that it's his great task that he has to do. It's his great burden. Is sort of his to found the Roman Empire. I think it's moles. I think is the right word. The Latin word. It's this idea of like a great difficult undertaking, and he goes and he does. He sacrifices everything to go do it, including his love for Dido and Carthage. That's what Aeneas does. Antony leaves Egypt in the same way that Aeneas left Carthage, but then goes back because he should have left. He should have been the great founder of the empire. This should have been a glorious moment. That's why I don't see any complaints here of like a desire to return back to the Republic. I think this is a criticism of sort of the I mean, in Shakespeare's terms, it's literally Mark Antony becomes effeminate. He becomes more and more like a woman. I mean, literally, the very first time that they see him, they cut it from the movie, which I was like, oh, I'm disappointed. So, although they did do a clever thing, I actually liked the way they introduced him. They show Antony, literally, Cleopatra putting lipstick on him, and it's clearly they're making a very clear statement here. But in the play, the first time they meet Antony, some of the servants are sitting there and like, "Oh, here comes my mistress. Here comes Cleopatra, my mistress." And they go, "Oh no, wait, it's Antony." So like they're literally this idea is they're constantly confusing him. So he's becoming sort of his experience of luxury and the East makes him effeminate. And so therefore he goes back to Cleopatra and does not fulfill his duty. He does not found an imperial line, and it sort of makes a nightmare and a disaster for generations, kind of thing. That's the way. That's what I feel like is going on here,
Yeah, I
right?
agree with that. I think that is absolutely true. I think that he's been effeminized. He is not embracing his role to fulfill a line. The problem is also that Egypt is now part of Rome. Rome is Egypt. It's
Yeah.
not as if he can, like Aeneas, leave Carthage and go found a polis somewhere. He is in Rome and he is in Egypt. They're the
But
same
he's
thing.
supposed to. But the thing is, again, I know this is sexist because this is, I think, the idea. But the idea here is that the East is effeminate and the masculine Rome should dominate
Oh,
it,
I absolutely
right?
agree.
I
I
mean,
think that's what's going on. But the
that's what's going on
problem
here.
with empire, with what's happening in this kind of political world is this is sort of a problem for a certain type of opinion with Great Britain as well, which is, oh no, we're going to expand outward until we have the East, until the West is the East and the East is the West. If you're just Rome, if you're just the polis, you are masculine, you are strong. You don't have to deal with this Eastern effeminate type thing that's too luxurious. It's too easy. Life is too simple there. It's too also weird there. I think one of the problems ends up being with this kind of idea of
So they
empire.
should. So they just sort of stuck with Gaul, and
Oh
and
yeah, I mean, I think it's just sort of, I don't, it's sort of an inevitability, right? It's just sort of like when things get big, you end up taking in too much.
was this a? I mean, this is a legitimate question. I have no idea. Was this actually a concern that Shakespeare would have had, or is this a modern veneer being placed on it? Like, there's no way. Was he really concerned in,
It
1608 or
might
whatever
have
that?
been a concern of Plutarch, his source, that it's like,
Okay, yes,
oh
yes, I could
yeah, yeah,
believe that.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
there's a
Yes, I could believe that
big
of Plutarch. Yeah.
English translation that comes out in 1579.
This isn't him trying to provide a warning to the British people.
I don't think so. And also I don't think Shakespeare makes specific political statements. Like I'm not saying Shakespeare is saying empire is bad. I think what's happening here is there's something about the world in which this man has become effeminized.
I
And
will agree with that. I will
yeah,
absolutely agree with this. I thought you were trying to say that Shakespeare was making a claim against empire, that Shakespeare is making this claim. Like that the British people should stick to their island.
I don't think he's saying anything about the British people.
But that's what I
Yeah,
thought you were
no,
trying
no,
to make
no.
this claim of. That this was Shakespeare's, I don't know, his, I don't even know who writes this kind of stuff. That they should stick within their nation and rule locally. Like,
No,
that's what I
I
thought you were trying to get at.
no, I don't think so. I think what he's doing here is like the effeminization of Anthony is obvious. Anthony is obviously clear, and the connection to Aeneas is also deliberate. I mean, Plutarch makes that point too, and Shakespeare. Some of the verse, like when he describes when Xenobarbus describes Antony seeing Cleopatra, that very famous verse. That's lifted pretty close from Plutarch. It's a very close. So he's very reliant on this. My argument more is that you're in this world of soft men that seems to go along with empire, right? The
Okay, I can
transition
I
from
can buy that.
republic.
I can absolutely buy that. Yes.
And there's also other problems too. I think the stuff with Octavius is it's not just Octavius is cold and stoic and Western, and Antony has been effeminized and become Eastern.
How
Like
did you describe that? That's the eighth grade.
the eighth grade, oh yeah, which this movie does. We'll get into
Oh, wait,
that. This
okay, sorry, we
freaking
didn't mean
movie.
to.
It's not just that. No, I think that's the eighth grade like staged version when you want to have your English language learners put on display. But anyway, it's not just that because I think Octavius is also revealing a lot of things that are changing that are that are not necessarily for the better, or at least we should question it. I think one of those things is what he does with Lepidus. Lepidus, he's just like, at one point, he's just like, he was kind of disruptive, right? He says he was being overly ambitious.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and he throws him in prison, right? That's it. Lepidus is done, and now Octavius is ready to rule the world. And this is kind of a problem of this particular instance. You don't have this problem when you have two councils are elected every year, right? You have a rule of one, And so they're in a circumstance now where it's not just, well, we have to deal with the East because we are the East. We're not just the West anymore. This is Rome also. And we have to now deal with these freaking people who are wandering into our empire or are part of our empire. But it's also like an empire needs an emperor. And that means you're gonna have one guy in charge. And if you have a triumvirate, it's, as soon as you can throw one of those guys in prison, you're gonna have a war with the other one because that's how you get in charge. And if you want to overthrow an emperor, you have to kill them because there's no election next year. You have to kill them. And so I think the behavior of Octavius, it's not just ice and fire, Octavius and Antony. I think it's also his political cunning reveals the nature of empire from here on out, which is not the thing that existed before Julius Caesar in the play we did last week. Right before Julius Caesar, you have a solid Roman world that has a lot of opportunity for transformation. After Caesar dies, the cracks start being there. First of all, Caesar's ambition is something that is changing things, but also Brutus's ambition. He doesn't want, like we talked about this, he doesn't want Cicero there because he wants to be the guy who's in charge. And now it's Antony's ambition, which, cracks on the shore, breaks on the shore of Cleopatra's, incredible sexiness and Egypt's incredible appeal. And then there's Octavius's ambition, which is, fortunate or unfortunate, he's capable. He's able to actually do these things. And fortunately, he has an effeminized opponent, so he can, win the day. But I think that's also going on here. But I don't think that takes away anything from what we're really interested in, which is what do you do with a person? What does Mark Antony do when suddenly you've, decided that Eros is the most important thing, and that kind of hard rationality of your homeland it's just not that interesting. It's not interesting enough, right? It's kind of about dissolving and those kind of old bonds start to dissolve, right? There's a lot of like water imagery and air imagery here in this play. The major fight occurs, or the first major fight occurs on the water, which is where they're like, Antony, don't go
Don't go
on
to the water.
water.
Yeah, don't go on
And he's
water.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll go on water. And of course, who leads him to screw up is
it's
Cleopatra.
Cleopatra.
Yeah, so I think it's just like this solid world that we knew really well is dissolving under the Eastern influence, and it needs to because it's not the solid world anymore. It's a world that includes the East in it, for better or worse. That's kind of my reading of this play.
Yeah, I mean, as my notes are, eunuchs, women in the East. It's just this.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a doctoral thesis title. Eunuchs, women in the East. There is this notion here that literally you are becoming castrated when you go here.
Oh, I
That
think so. Yeah.
that's the very clear implication here. I mean, he can't even kill himself. He can't even kill himself properly. Um, yeah, which I just think is like that's just the ultimate emasculation. Like he literally he does nothing, and in his one action that he attempts to do of violence, he fails at.
Yeah.
There is this sort of yeah, there's a sense there of but I think that's so I would agree. I thought your claim was that this was Shakespeare's like warning on empire. And I'm like, I don't think there's a clue Shakespeare had any sense of that in whatever 1608, 7, whatever it is, of the pending British Empire. There is no there's no way this was his warning to the future. But yes, I think if he's using Plutarch as his primary source, then yeah, he's gonna pick up on that. That's a consideration that Plutarch would have. And Shakespeare's probably he's a good enough artist that when he reads that, even a little bit of it, he's gonna channel it. He's gonna pick up those concerns and pull them forward. So yes,
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
it's also with his other Roman plays, especially it's the world has gotten bigger. Right? This is a play about when the world gets bigger. Because Coriolanus, and if I remember, it's been a while since I read Coriolanus, but Coriolanus also is Roman, right? They're just in
Yeah.
Rome. And
I mean,
and
it's much earlier. It's only I think like a relatively shortly after the overthrow of the Tarquins
Yeah, yeah.
and
Coriolanus is very.
Coriolanus.
But that's like it's very masculine that play. That
Yeah.
it's extremely masculine, and
Yeah, I mean the only thing that the women do in that play is try to convince Coriolanus to not go to war.
mhm,
And because he eventually he says like I'm going to leave, I'm going to fight them, I'm going to have a war, and the only thing they do is try to persuade him not to
mhm.
slaughter everyone.
Which
And he which he does.
yeah, they fell at that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because he maintains, unlike Cleopatra, what is it, Voluminous? Is that his mother's name?
Who, Coriolanus' mother?
Yeah,
Oh, I don't remember.
yeah,
Could be.
yeah,
I
but
don't remember.
they fell at it, and so you end up having like the masculine virtues as much as their virtues. I don't mean them as that Shakespeare's endorsing this, but whatever it is, it's this kind of very
They're
masculine
internal
thing.
virtues. They're the virtues that the characters would value, not
Yes,
necessarily that the playwrights or we would value, but they're the virtues that the characters value.
yeah, the characters and the world too. I think that world
Well,
of Coriolanus,
yeah. Well, that's the only
yeah,
thing they have to make the world is the
yeah,
characters. So
yeah, fair enough. They value that, and they value it in this play too, but it's kind of going away. But it's eventually that stuff isn't gonna last much longer. That kind of masculine thing isn't gonna last much longer. It probably should if this man, Mark Antony, was able to, as you're saying, maintain his duty and become the Aeneas he should.
yeah, this is his tragedy. This is the tragedy of Antony. He succumbs to the luxuries of the East. That's his tragedy.
Yeah. But I think it's also the tragedy of a world that gets so big that it's the whole world. We're now in the whole
It
world.
pulls
Yeah.
good men down. Good
Yeah.
men get pulled down because of that. I mean, I think the play likes Antony. I think especially after Julius Caesar, it wants to like him, and I think you do like him. When he goes to Rome, you do actually you're like, ah. I mean, I know how obviously how it ends, so it doesn't yeah, but like you kind of think that, if you don't know, when he goes to Rome, you go, "Oh, yeah, he's making the right choices. They're all doing the right things. You know, He's going to marry, he's going to settle, he's going to make a good alliance. This is smart. This is clever. This is what you should do. Like the world will stabilize now here." And then, and he's a moron and leaves and goes back and you just watch him bungle from stupid decision to stupid decision. But you like him. You don't want him to go down that road.
No, you don't. And he's competent in his dealing with Octavius. He's not as smart as Octavius, but he also has charisma in a way that Octavius doesn't. As much as I didn't like this movie, it at least was able to figure out that Octavius doesn't have a lot of charisma and Antony does have a lot of charisma. That's why you have the movie star play Antony. And so he's able to use that, and you could see why.
Poor Octavian. Every time I've ever seen him in anything, he's played by the most like they just get the like Abercrombie and Fitch model to just stand there and declaim his lines. Like every movie, everything I've ever seen him in, and it's like, was he really this bad?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he was, because he was a weakling. We do know that because they
Yeah,
kept thinking, oh, he's going to die, and then he just lived until his 70s or something like that. So I imagine that kind of thing is on everybody's minds when they make him, and especially it allows him to stand in contrast to Antony a little bit because Antony's virile.
but it's just I mean, and this seems to be what he must have been like. But it's like everything, like the HBO series Rome. I mean, the actor who plays him is great because he comes across as just this creepy, like Norman Bates, like blonde, egregiously pasty white person. And but usually whenever you see him, he's always the dullest. Like, does anybody have a vibrant Augustus Caesar? Has
Um,
anybody done that?
I don't know. I can't say I'm a
It's odd
wonderfully
to
expert on
neither am I,
depictions
but
of Augustus Caesar. It's
But
odd
it just
because
strikes me as odd because this is a man who's going to found the Roman Empire, and everybody has just agreed that he was so dull. Like, that he was basically just like, I mean, he wasn't even like, he was like the Jimmy Carter. He was just like a clever Jimmy Carter. Like, no one, you know what I mean?
I get like Machiavellian incel. That's usually like
Yeah.
he's a little
Okay.
more,
Yeah.
yeah,
Actually, that's perfect. Yeah. To use the kids' terms. Yeah.
use the kids' terms, yeah.
He's a Machiavellian incel. Like, and why? Why did we? I really want to know? Is that what he was like?
I mean, he
He's
seemed
got
like
to have
he
been
was
more
a
dynamic than that, right?
decent guy. I would think so. I would think he's like a decent. I think it's just because he was sickly. They're just like, well, sickly people can't be dynamic because
Yeah.
they're coughing so much. You know,
Yeah.
something like
No, I
that.
mean, I would agree.
No one sickly is dynamic. You know,
I would love to see like that. I don't know
I
if
bet he
anybody's
was
done
more
it.
like JFK because JFK was also pretty sickly, and yet he was still, you know, he was very charismatic and very dynamic. Whatever you want to say about his presidency, his public appearance worked very well. Yeah, it's odd because Anthony seems to be like one of the like authentically great emperors. You know, I think
Antony,
we,
yeah.
yeah, like, I
And that's
mean,
why I say I think that's that the play is bemoaning the failure. Like, oh God, if that man had joined, if
oh,
you'd
I'm sorry.
joined his.
I meant to say that Augustus was one of the great emperors.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, well, he was practical. He was certainly practical, and he knew how to sort of get himself into the right
And he was
place.
good with PR. He was
Yeah,
really good with not being an emperor. He was very good at
yeah.
creating the performance of I'm not an emperor.
I'm not an emperor. I'm the
I'm first
Principes.
amongst
Yeah,
equals. Yeah,
I'm the
yeah,
Principes. I'm the first citizen, but that's it. I'm a citizen. And I mean, suppose I think he always had a consul who ruled with him. He technically was always a consul, um, with someone else. He was, the other consul was not stupid enough to do anything.
yeah.
And so I think he was a very clever man. It's just like, but I mean, we're off on a tangent here, but I just
Yeah.
always find it weird that they always get everything I ever see him in. He gets portrayed as this cold fish, awful thing, and I'm like, why? Then why were people following this guy? I just find it odd. I don't think it's true.
Yeah, yeah. It's really bad in this particular film. Anyway,
Do we want to jump to the film?
want to jump to the film? Yeah, we should talk about Cleopatra at some point.
Okay.
But
Well, let's talk about
let's jump to the
Cleopatra.
film in the context of
Well,
the
we can
film.
talk about how the Cleopatra on the page is so different because than the Cleopatra on the film because, she has appeal.
So yeah, the Cleopatra. The Cleopatra. She's like a merger. When you read her, um, in those battle scenes and whatnot, she's like a merger of Aphrodite and Mercury. Like part of her appeal.
She reminds me if you made Kate from Taming of the Shrew queen. Like, right? She just kind of has this I mean, especially when she's
And
like
gave her a
beating
libido.
yeah, and gave her a libido. Like it's just this like she is fierce, She is little, but she is fierce. The she is fierce and everything like she's like beating the servant, she's loud, she's all over like she is very dynamic.
Yeah, she's very dynamic. She's also part of her appeal seems to be that she's changeable. She just goes with the wind a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that seems to be kind of the thing. And you think like dummy is not going back to her after she abandons him in the water, and then he does. And it seems to be part of the appeal is just this like, I'm going to jump from thing to thing. I'm going to flirt with this messenger at one point, and capture Antony's attention in that way. I'm going to like sell out to Caesar at one point and capture Antony's. I mean, it just seems like she. It just seems like she can't be stable, right? Like she's
Yeah, I mean,
too
this is why in the
big,
Rome
too enormous.
In that HBO Rome series, that actress, I don't know, have you seen it?
I have not, no.
The first season is good. The first season is actually really good. In the beginning of the second season, and then they canceled it, so they basically had to like just barrel through from.
Hurry up. Yeah.
Yeah, they basically had to go from like I think the last really good episode is Philippi, and then they had to like basically get from Philippi to apparently the original goal I think was to have like end of season three be the suicide of like Antony and Cleopatra, and then they basically were like, well, now we have to get through all that in like 6 episodes, and so they just barrel through the rest of it, and it doesn't work. But the woman who plays Cleopatra, because Cleopatra had a daughter with Julia or son with Julius Caesar, so you've already got that had occurred years before. So she's slept now with Julius Caesar and with Antony and probably many others. But the thing
And
is,
Pompeii.
and Pompey,
Mhm.
is that actually true?
I don't know if it's true. It's what they say in this play, right? They mention that.
Oh, do they? I don't remember
They
that.
do mention that, yeah, that
Oh, okay.
she's because at one point after she's abandoned him, he's like, oh, I wrote this line. It's in Act Three. He says, Antony says to her, "I found you as a morsel cold upon dead Caesar's trencher. Nay, you are a fragment of Gnaeus Pompey's.
Huh.
Besides what hotter hours unregistered in vulgar fame."
Well, that's good. I didn't
That's
notice
yeah,
that.
yeah.
That's good.
Mhm.
Um, the that's really good. But no, I guess the the thing with the movie with the HBO series is that woman is very appealing. Like she's and it's not like a it's not like a sexual appeal. It is, but it's just the like this is a woman you could imagine a lot of men being very very interested in. And again, it's not the like because she looks like Stacy's mom. Like it's
Mhm.
because she's that was what popped in my head. I'm going with it. So it's she's just it's not a physical thing. Like she is dynamic, she is fun, she is charismatic. Like this is a woman that men just see and are like I gotta go to her, and you buy it in that series. There's problems with it, but she is believable. Like you can believe that men would do all of the things that they actually did historically for her. Whereas this movie, I'm like, that lady, it's like, what is she doing? No one would do anything for her.
It's a very
It's a weird
uninspiring form.
performance.
It's Hildegard Neal. We should give her name. She's playing
I feel
Cleopatra.
bad. She's probably still alive. She's still alive.
She
Not that she's
died
gonna be
in
listening.
2023.
All right, so we're good. I'm not gonna. Not that she's gonna watch our podcast, but I do feel bad about trashing some old lady.
Do you know who she was married to?
Obviously not.
Brian Blessed.
No way. Oh
Yeah,
God.
they were married in 1978. She was married to him shortly after this.
Oh, that's so interesting. I
That's
love
so
Brian Blessed.
weird. Yeah.
He's way better than she is. I mean, maybe she's good in other Shakespeare, but this is a bad role for her. It's a bad role. She could maybe do like a Lady Macbeth or something else. I don't know what she could do, but she is just I'm not believing it. I'm not buying anything that she was doing as like why Charlton Heston would care. Not that I was
Yeah.
buying anything Charlton Heston was doing either, but
Yeah, it's an opera. It comes off as well, first of all, I mean, she's a pretty lady. The makeup and
that's the
hair
point.
doesn't help.
It's not
It's not
physical.
about that. It's
It's not
about
physical. It's not that she's not attractive.
mm,
It's just there's the character. There's no way. Like
yeah.
there's just no there's no dynamism. There's no life. There's no energy.
Yeah, she plays it kind of like a little bit of a whiny schoolgirl. When she puts on
Yeah.
her helmet and takes a little arrow and goes out to fight and says she
That was
fights.
such a stupid decision.
It's just like it looks like she annoys you. You're not like, oh, I would follow this woman if she left the battle. It's just like, oh, God,
Yeah.
can you go away? Can you go
But
away?
even like the scene where she berates the servant,
Hmm.
and whether this was Heston's direction or whatever the heck was going on, in the play, this is where she most reminds me of Kate, of Catherine from Taming of the Shrew. I mean, she just destroys. It's like a couple pages in the text where she just berates this servant. Whereas, like the movie, I don't even know what it was. It was like Groucho Marx kind of thing, but
Dude.
without the actual physical humor. It was bad. It had no sense that this woman was like actually a rate, that there was this. I mean, in the text, it's like you literally picturing a volcano going off. That she's found out that Mark Antony has married this other woman. Whereas in this, it was just like it was like a mild nuisance.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And the servant in that scene is doing all of the work.
Yeah, and he's got nothing to
He's got
go
not to
off of.
work with.
Like he's supposed to be the better scene, actually, the one where it did work. In that scene, he's like cowering. I'm like, why is he afraid of this woman? She doesn't seem to be doing anything. She's like hitting the fish in the tank, like this thing harder than she's hitting
Oh,
him.
yes. Yeah.
It was that giant fish tank in the middle,
Hmm.
and I was like, she's just splashing through water. I'm like, why are you? I mean, I understand that I'm supposed to assume you're afraid of her because she's the queen, but she's not doing anything to suggest that. The scene where it actually was kind of worked was when he's like, she's asking about Octavia, and it's like, is her face round or flat? And like the
Mhm.
guys next to her, like giving her like little
Yeah,
visual
yeah.
signals. That was a good scene. That scene actually I thought kind of worked.
She must be
Um,
30.
yeah, and
It's
again, yeah, she must be 30, and it's like, like
Ooh.
everyone that worked because there's this like she's not angry. We're all getting the tension because it was all sort of under, just tone, and it was all controlled anger. And she could do that, but when she was actually supposed to display anger, it was completely and utterly unbelievable.
Yeah, it's not she's I guess they're both the center, but she is the thing that endures. She goes until the last scene. He
Yeah.
dies in Act 4, and you get the full display of her emotional range and the depth of her love for him, how she conceives of love as something that can be immortal and infinite. And she has this idea of Antony as this giant statue that fills up the world. It's a great scene, and I can't remember her saying any of those lines. I mean,
No.
I read the play within the same 2 days that I saw the movie, and I couldn't. I know she was in that stupid little thing she was in the movie, in her monument or whatnot.
You got
Which
to talk about the
we got to talk
monument
about the
later.
monument,
The
but
monument is great. What? Oh yeah.
but I can't remember any of it. Um,
No, the only line I remember, which because I kind of like the line, there's a certain level of like it's a good Shakespearean line, it's good humor, is the like when he's gone, she doesn't know that he's gotten married yet, and she says something like I'm gonna botch the paraphrasing, but it's something like I wish I were the horse that bears him because that horse, and it's like I wish you were riding me. There's this like it's such a great double entendre line, and it's just like a really great. There's a lot going on with it, and it expresses a lot. It's a good Shakespearean line, and I think that's why I remember it, but I don't remember her saying anything.
I get to, there were scenes. There was a scene after Antony marries Octavia, and he's just with her. They don't say anything. He just looks at her. I thought that was Cleopatra. I was like, oh, he must be back in Egypt by now. And I realized I had kept confusing Octavia and Cleopatra because there was Octavia who's not supposed to be distinct. That's the idea of Octavia, is that she's just supposed to be kind of
Cold, bland, yeah.
unlovable, yeah, bland. Yeah, she's just there's nothing to her.
That's what, when they say she's a cold lady and they say, well, that's what you want in a wife.
Mhm,
And
yeah,
he says, not Antony, and yeah, she's supposed to be a marriage alliance tool and a birth giver. Like literally
yeah,
that's what the play presents her as.
yeah, yeah. And I couldn't tell them apart when I saw them. I literally thought I was looking at Cleopatra when I was looking at Octavia. And another production I had seen of this, it was clear, like almost to the point of silly, where Octavia was kind of dowdy and looking down and like a little messy in her appearance. And you don't have to go that far, but she was just as beautiful as Cleopatra,
Yep.
just as appealing. I couldn't tell you why one of them was someone I would have to rush back to Egypt and give up my career for, and the other one was just just too uninteresting to spend any more time with. So it's bizarre little some bizarre acting choices.
There's a lot of bizarre choices. I mean, Heston is, we can talk about Heston. I
Yeah,
mean, it's not great. He's
yeah.
either literally, I mean, literally, there's a point where he's actually, I think, chewing the scenery. Like, literally has his mouth, like, on the scenery.
Mhm.
He's either doing that or he's trying, I think, to do a subtle performance, and it just comes across as unbelievably dull.
It's a really boring. The whole movie is boring because he's either
The whole thing is boring.
screaming
Yeah, he's either
or just
screaming.
like looking like it's his constipated face. It's just it's just this like kind of squished up um mouth open thing. I can't remember line deliveries in it. His underwear I remember more clearly than any. and he has this
The
really
underwear is so good,
he's
and you get to see
wearing
it twice.
yeah, he's wearing like a thong, but then on the front part, it's like a little cloth. It looks like it looks like a little cloth in front that
It's like flesh tone.
yeah. Like what this looks so uncomfortable and it's not really covering anything.
Why
Why
you
is
bother?
yeah.
Just let it hang, buddy.
Yeah.
And the
So
movie didn't have any problem with nudity because then they have the one random naked girl at one point where they just smack her ass and make her put a blanket on.
yeah, for
Like,
some
okay, this
reason.
is just the 70s, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean if you're gonna have a play with excessive nudity, this is the one to do it with, right? I mean that's Egypt seems like a place of nudity,
yeah.
but it's it's not it's an odd it's what happens with it is either the choices are so obvious, and we should talk about when we first meet Octavius,
Oh, that
or
was
they're just
bad.
not varied enough. The speeches in the work are not varied enough, so everything bleeds together. Nothing
No, you're right.
pops
There was
out.
nothing that anyone said except for maybe Lepidus. I did laugh at some of
Lepidus is
Lepidus's
good.
stuff.
This is Fernando Rey as Lepidus.
I mean, you
Lepidus,
know a production is bad when you're praising Lepidus.
yeah.
Like
Lepidus, I like how he plays it as a guy who's like, if these people need to get along for me to live.
to
That's,
live. Yeah.
yeah. If I'm gonna live, these people need to get along. And he's kind of nervous, and he's not going too comic with it, but you also understand what position this man is. It's a really, really good performance. I didn't mind Eric Porter as Enobarbus.
No, Enobarbus is pretty good.
He's
I actually
fine.
liked him. I actually
Yeah,
liked him a lot. I thought
yeah,
he was of the real people, he gives a good performance.
yeah. I don't think there's anything remarkable about it, but I think it's a steady
It
performance.
wasn't annoying.
Yeah, I sent you that clip. So there's a clip of um I think it's no, it's Trevor Nunn working with Patrick Stewart, who played
Oh, I
this
didn't
role
watch it. I
twice.
didn't watch it. Yeah, I didn't watch it.
Oh, it's interesting because
I
Patrick
should have.
Stewart
Yeah, I didn't get
talks
to it yet.
about his two productions as Enobarbus. And the first production he does Enobarbus's most famous speech is when he describes how Antony saw Cleopatra for the first
Yeah,
time.
dumbing down. Yeah, the boat coming down the Nile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's explaining it to some of Octavius's second in commands. And how Stewart plays it is he plays it like he is playing it up a bit. Like Enobarbus realizes that he wants a little attention, so he kind of plays up the scene a little bit. He exaggerates it, and he's checking them out to see if he's getting attention from them. And it's really fun. It's like a strong choice. It works really well. You don't have anything like that in
I
this
forgot about
movie.
it. I totally forgot I know he delivered the speech, but I don't remember it. I don't remember a single word of it.
Yeah, I don't. When you see Stewart do it, it's well. I also looked only at that speech of Stewart, so maybe that's why it remained in my memory. But with Stewart is making such a strong choice that whether or not you think it's the best choice or not, it stands out. He's making a strong choice. I think Enobarbus is just Eric Porter as Enobarbus is the right person for the role, but he's not given anything to do. I don't think, and he doesn't have anybody to work off of.
No.
Um, and the movie is there's lots of cuts too. There's lots of jumping back and forth, and that's part of the play. I mean, if you read the play,
I
Act
mean, it's
three and
always there,
four.
but you know, you can still make beats work. I mean, there's
Mhm.
plenty of frenetic paced movies. You know, there's plenty of those things. That's not the problem. It's just nothing is distinct.
Mhm.
Nothing.
Yeah, yeah. That's
I mean,
not.
the only thing, the things that are like most distinct were like, as we said, like the scene where they first meet, where they see them first meet, and there's a uh, Octavian is watching a sort of it's a gladiatorial battle, and he's kind of sitting there watching it, and it's like a heavy man, it's like the heavy fighting one of the I don't remember what they were called, but the ones that have the trident and the net. I can't remember what they're called, but the ones that are the tried in the net, they have like there was all the gladiators had like different types, and they were always like had their different sort of strategies, and so the trident and the net guy, I wish I could remember what they're called, but they all have a name. But they're fighting, and so the idea is that you're watching them kind of clang, and if they just kind of left it in the background, it would be fine. But then they really, really, they just hammer it with editorial choices that, oh, they're having a physical battle out there, and Antony and Octavian are having a battle of words up above. Ah, these scenes are linked, and they do it over and over and over. They even have like layovers with the two of them fighting with Octavian and Heston's head like overlaid on them. I'm like, I got it. Like it was clever. This is the disrespecting your audience. They're just like, I gotta make sure they get this. I spent all this money filming this and choreographing it. I gotta make sure it gets through. They have no respect for the audience, and so they just keep hammering it. But I do remember that scene. That actually was, kind of clever. It was fun to watch them fight.
Mhm.
Like
And
that's
even yeah, and even where they're sitting, right? Like they sit Lepidus down in the main
yeah.
chair, and he starts to get
Well, no,
really
Lepidus
uncomfortable.
takes the main chair because they're both arguing over which one. They're both like clearly
Oh,
like, if
mm.
you take the chair, then it's an insult to me, and if I take the chair, And so Lepidus is like, I'll take the chair,
Yeah.
and so
Mhm.
now neither of you can insult the other one because I took the big chair. Like again, it was just like that's clever, like that's good choices, and even just Lepidus sitting in it, like, are you guys gonna yell at me because I sat in the chair? Like he's literally looking like they're gonna yell at me because I sat in the big chair. And it was just like such a great moment.
Yeah.
That guy is great.
Mhm.
But so those kind like that scene was memorable, but so many others are not.
Mhm. Very little else is. The sea battle.
I liked when Lepidus falls in the when they're trying to get them in the boat and Lepidus falls, he doesn't get in the boat and he falls over and is just hanging on the boat while they tow him away and he's just being towed away again.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, that's funny, that's clever. I laughed. That was a choice. You made a good choice. But he's the only one who seems to have known he was in a movie.
Yeah. The sea battle is rough. They're borrowing both thematically, visually, and literally from Ben-Hur in the sea battle.
That does not surprise me. I mean, obviously they were because obviously they were borrowing visually and thematically. I mean, literally, I'm
But they
like,
literally took cuts from Ben-Hur that were not in the finished film and put it in there.
it doesn't surprise me. That scene is interminable. Even the other battle scene. I mean, there's like a whole battle scene with this kind of thing, and then I'm like, you had too much faith. You thought that these were gonna really carry this movie. They are long. And there's nothing really of substance in them, except when Heston falls off his horse and flashes us again with his flesh-toned underwear. It's the only movie, the thing where I rewound it, I went, did they show this again? This was the best shot you got of Heston falling off the horse was where he's going to show us his underwear at the most like the climactic moment of his failure to run away. It reminded me of in the Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns tries to direct a movie. Have you seen this one?
I have, yes, yeah.
And he falls off his horse, and the horse like runs away and drags him behind it. And they go, "We had 51 shots, and that was the best one." This reminded me of his Heston falling off his horse as he shows his junk again, and they're going, "It's like, oh, I took 51 shots, and that was the best one." This is Heston was like, "Oh, I have to go
Uh,
with that one."
yeah,
It
and the
was
horse
so
disappears. That was the thing. In the next shot, that the horse is gone. Because that was the thing that kept distracting me with that scene was like, I'm like, how did they make the horse fall? That did the horse get hurt? And then the continuity screws up because there's no horse when we're done falling down. So you have his junk and then a vanishing horse. Whatever. It is
Can we
what it
go to
is.
Cleopatra's treehouse?
Oh God! So Cleopatra. So we know from Act Five, I think is, or Act Four. Act Four, she seals herself. It's Act Four. She seals herself in her monument, and she's like, "I'm never going to leave this place." She tells her waiting woman, and it was much more appealing to me than actual
Oh yeah, she
Cleopatra.
was pretty dynamic. I liked her. I
She
actually
was
thought
dynamic. She was sexy. She
she
was,
was
yeah,
cool. I actually liked the
yeah. But
both of the serving women, including the woman who didn't talk,
yeah.
was better.
But so they go in there, and apparently it's about two stories, I guess. And in the top story, there's just an opening where, if you climb a short ladder, you can get in there. But she's sealed in, so she can't leave or anybody get in. So at one point,
But
after
I think they can close and reopen that door thing, right? Because she keeps having this random handle that she's like keeps turning. And then there's like these hidden doors, which the hidden doors and things just reminded me of like Young Frankenstein, where they're like, put the candle back. because they keep opening these hidden doors
Mhm.
and like turning these torches and like all this stuff. And it just reminded me of that. But anyway,
I
there's a
thought the idea
door.
wasn't she couldn't get out. Right? She's going to seal herself up in
That
this
was what I
monument.
think is supposed to be in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're not entirely sure how she's sealed. Because people get in, like a lot of people get in.
A
They
lot
don't
of
have any
people get it.
trouble.
That's why I
They
said it
don't
was
have-
Cleopatra's treehouse. It was just like a slight. It's just like she pulled up a rope ladder, and everyone was like,
Yeah, nobody seems to have a lot. I think there's like three or four people who
"There's a lot." They
individually
keep
get
going.
into the
So the
space.
thing is, so for we'll get to my favorite entry, the best entry of any of the characters into Cleopatra's
Yeah.
treehouse. But when they were like lift up the bodies and carry them, carry them out of the, oh, they're gonna get them out of the treehouse. They can't carry these bodies out. And Heston apparently thought of it because he shows like a ladder going down that they put there, and they show them like trying to carry the bodies down the ladder. I'm like, because that was the important thing of your film. You had to account for that. But the best characters entry.
Was that Menace? Who was that?
No, that's what's his name? That's one we were just talking about.
No, it wasn't Caesar. It was was it? It wasn't Lepidus is in prison by this point. Who was it? Agrippa? I don't
No,
think
it's
it
the
was
other guy that
Agrippa.
it's the other guy that follows Grip around, the one who does the speech, the one who does the boat speech.
Oh, who? Oh, I don't know. Who does the boat speech?
The one who does the first time that Antony sees Cleopatra.
Oh no, it's not Enobarbus. Enobarbus is dead by then.
Oh, that's right, Enobarbus is dead.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the other dude. You're right. No, you're totally right. It's the other dude. It's the dude who follows around Caesar.
It's some other guy. I
Augustus.
think
I
it.
don't remember what his name is.
Yeah,
That's that dude.
it's
No, you're
not
totally right. It's not
Agrippa,
Enobarbus.
but it's some.
It's not Agrippa. It's
It
the
might
other
be
dude.
Porcelius.
Sure.
Sure, whatever. But anyway, so at one point he comes in and she's going to kill herself, and he has a bunch of troops with him, and then he kind of he doesn't even give the order.
He does like a he
Yeah,
like
and
waves his
all
hands and
the
some.
troops put out their shields in a gradual elevation up to the opening of the treehouse, so he can sprint up the shields into the treehouse, no problem whatsoever, and grab her hand before she kills herself with the sword. And it makes you wonder, why in God's name were
They
these
prepare.
people prepared to do this? What circumstance were like, we have to train for every contingency? What if there's a
One of our
building that's
commander needs
sealed?
to jump a 10-foot wall really fast.
Yeah, it's he's got to get over a 10-foot wall, and he doesn't really need to get to the other side. He just needs to get to the top of the
Just needs to get
wall
to the top and then
really, really, really fast.
I'm sorry. It's really funny. It was so stupid.
And it happens so quickly too. They just boom, put it down, and he
It's just
runs up there.
jackrabbits up there.
Yeah, they were clearly like they were ready for this plan.
But the thing is that's the internal humor of it. But the physical thing is that like they must have obviously they must have rehearsed that a lot.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the actual
Hmm.
filming of it internally, it makes no sense. But even just like externally, it's like they were like, well, we got to have every one of these guys has to get into her monument treehouse differently. So, you know, Heston's going to be dragged up by his entrails, pretty much.
Effectively, yeah.
And the other one's gonna climb. I don't know how Octavian got it. I guess he came through there, and like the soothsayer is just gonna appear from nowhere.
Yeah, that's true. He
But
also
this
has an-
dude needs his own way, so he's gonna have it. So they must have practiced it over and over and over again because they show him do it. They actually show him
Oh,
them
yeah.
holding the shields up and him jumping up the shields, and
Mm.
then you must have rehearsed that for hours.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm.
like imagine
And then the
because he
soothsayer just shows up.
well, I mean, he's supposed to be magic, I think, but
Yeah, yeah.
so I guess that's it because he can apparently do a voiceover at one point. But the thing is, like, just as actors, they must have rehearsed it for hours because it's like, there's no way you were just gonna be like, hold the shields up and I'll run. You must have like kind of gradually had them do it, and then you like tested the strength to make sure it was gonna work.
You
There
hired
was,
a stunt coordinator,
yeah,
probably.
yeah, you
Maybe you had a
hired all
stunt
the
man to do part of it.
maybe, but it's like you put a lot of effort into something that was really stupid, like just really stupid, and then you kept it in the movie
Mhm.
because I guess they had to. How else was he getting up there? It
Yeah.
was such a stupid,
Mhm.
stupid decision.
Mhm. Yeah. It's
And it was hilarious.
it's really funny. Yeah, that's what I was telling you. Like just hang on. The last 20 minutes of the movie are worth the suffering of the rest of it. Um,
Yeah, I mean it's a bad movie.
yeah.
You know, I don't know what was going on.
Apparently he had wanted Orson Welles to direct it. He was really pushing for Orson Welles, and
Oh,
Orson Welles backed
interesting.
out, so he just kind of took it. And he was able to
Hmm.
save them a ton of money because he just deferred his fee. Heston did.
Was
He
he
did.
hoping for profits? Or did
I
he just
think he
want
just
to do
wanted to
it?
make it. I think he just wanted to make it. Um,
Hmm.
and he did. He got it
Was it well
done.
received at the time? I'm guessing it
No,
wasn't. No.
no, it wasn't received. It didn't make any money. It lost a lot. Uh, and it wasn't. I don't think it even made a very big release in the U.S. because it had
Okay.
such bad reviews overseas that they kind of didn't do very much with it. And it wasn't released in DVD until 2001.
Oh
Oh,
God.
2011. Sorry, no, 2011.
That's even worse.
Yeah, I know.
That was when DVDs were on their way out.
Yeah,
And
that
then they
nobody
did it.
thought of it. Like, oh God, there's a Shakespeare movie with Charlton Heston. I guess we should put this on DVD.
Yeah, I mean I
Um,
watched it on Tubi.
Tubi? I don't know.
Tubi?
I've been
I don't
calling
know.
it Tubi, but
I think it's Tubi. That seems right. I don't think it's
that sounds
Tubby.
good.
Tubby
Yeah,
would be funny. I think it's Tubi.
Tubi. Mhm.
Which is actually great. I actually kind of like Tubi. It's pretty cool. Their ads are a little long, but it's actually pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I saw it on
Um,
Amazon Prime, which was had
oh,
fewer
this one?
ads.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, no. Oh, I guess I didn't know it was on Amazon Prime. I
Mhm.
just watched it on Tubi. I've watched a few of the movies you've done on Tubi.
Mhm.
It's actually pretty decent, but um, yeah, it's just a really, it's not like train wreck movie. Like
It's
it's not
not The
She's the
Room.
Man.
Yeah,
It's
or
not
yeah,
what
The Room.
The Room. Yeah,
Yeah.
Troll 2. I haven't seen The Room. I've seen Troll 2.
I've only seen
Um,
parts of The Room.
I've seen all of Troll 2, and I've seen like Manos Hands of Fate. I give a little more credit to because that one's actually like. Have you
Mhm.
seen Manos Hands of Fate?
I haven't, but I know this story. The truck driver who
Yeah, the
basically
truck
did it
driver.
on a bet.
Yeah, and I'm like, kudos to you, dude. You
Yeah,
did
yeah.
make a movie. He raised the money, he films it, he wrote a script, he got it out there. I'm like, you know what? Like this is if
Yeah,
this was a
hats off.
college student film, people would be raving over it. But I was like, he's a random dude. Give him some credit. If he continued down this road, he might have made something of himself. But it's a terrible movie, but it's incompetent, but he wasn't supposed to be. Things like Troll 2 that was made by like professional people. They were supposed to know what they were doing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but
It's usually
this thing isn't that bad, but it's just
it's just hard when you do bad Shakespeare, and especially this. I think this is especially hard Shakespeare because there's a lot of jumping back and forth. So you could just, if you're not really attentive to defining your beats or knowing how to actually do Shakespeare stuff, it could just bleed altogether.
which it does. Yeah, which it does. Yeah.
Yeah, and this it does, but like you read Act 3 and 4 of this play, there's like one act has 15 scenes, the other has 17 scenes. That's a lot for a Shakespeare act. This thing is just jumping all over the place. And you need somebody who's really good at cutting, I think, but also really good at defining beats, establishing locations. I think Orson Welles' version of this might be
Might have been fairly interesting.
really fun. Yeah. There's also none of the imagination. I mean, a lot of the poetry and it's pretty imaginative. I think of that description of the crocodile that Antony gives at one point. He describes a crocodile and he defines it in these terms of like it is whatever color it wants to be and it's of a certain length. And it's just this really interesting thing where at first I thought it was a sex joke. I thought he was describing like his genitals. But then after a while I'm realizing,
I
oh
mean,
no,
it's Shakespeare. He could
it's
be.
probably both, yeah. But then it moves past that into this like it's like this very mythical beast that comes out, and it's
Yeah,
filled with
that's
that.
probably talking about his junk. But
The mythical beast,
yeah,
his junk.
exactly. But I mean,
Yeah,
it's very Shakespearean to kind of have the double entendre
yeah,
and have it still be very effective. Um,
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really great poetry. Or like talking about the clouds at one point when after he's lost the sea battle and he's going back, and if he's in another boat with somebody, and he's talking about in the movie anyway, and he's describing the clouds and how the clouds are moving into these different shapes and things like that. It's this really gorgeous speech, and it's like it's just you don't
I don't
remember
remember
it.
it.
I
I
don't
don't
remember it.
remember it.
Yeah, yeah. It's really there's a lot in here that could make a good movie. I don't know why no one's made a good movie of this yet, but maybe those are the reasons. Maybe it's just
I think it's really. I mean, I think it's hard. I mean, the Shakespeare's hard anyway, and making of the did has anybody made a really good movie? Other they made a good Hamlet, they made a good Macbeth. We'll get to Othello, but like, and I guess we'll get to Lear. But of those sort of tragedies that nobody cares about, it's really hard to do them because your audience lacks the cult. They I mean they lack the. This isn't a criticism. They lack the framework to sort of understand what's going on with it. Like you kind of need to have a relatively advanced knowledge of not advanced, but you need to have a reasonably good knowledge of what Shakespeare is trying to do, what the time period was, what the conflict is. Like, if you don't understand who Lepidus is, what is this guy doing? Like, you would have no idea. You'd be like, is this their father? Like, who is this man? Like, I think you would be watching this being like, who is this guy?
yeah.
So,
Even
you
somebody
have,
like Agrippa, you don't know
yeah,
who
even
Agrippa is.
Agrippa. Like, if you don't know who Agrippa is, you'd be like, why is this guy here? And why do we keep hearing from Agrippa? If you don't understand that, you're going to be lost. And you've got a very rapid character development where they just assume you know who that is.
They don't do that as much in Julius Caesar. I feel like Julius Caesar, you can go in pretty
You can go into
cold
it pretty easily.
and
Yeah.
get everything, more or less everything you need.
Because there's no backstory to these characters. That no one cares who Mark Antony was before this. He's Caesar's strongman. That's all you need to know. You don't really need to know that much about Brutus. You don't need to know much about his history with the Tarquins. Like you're fine. You can get it without that. So you can pick up on a decent chunk of it. But if you're trying to figure out like if you don't know any of that, like this movie just has a lot of backstory. It's like watching like Henry the Sixth Part Two. I said I actually liked Henry the Sixth Part Two. I think that's the
It's
best of those
best of the
three
Henry
plays.
Six, yeah.
It's the best of the Henry Sixth. It's actually a pretty good play, but then no one in their right minds would ever stage it because how are you going to know who any of these people are? And
Yeah,
so it's a good play, but no one will ever stage it because at least on its own, because it's we don't have the framework for it.
yeah. I mean, I've actually seen it once staged on its own, but that was a MFA student thing. There
Different
was a
story.
different context. Yeah, they're trying to do like a rare Shakespeare play as a proof of their, whatever,
Yeah, which is what you
proof
do
of
as
their
a student.
skills.
That's what
Yeah,
you're
which is
supposed to do as
fine.
a student. That's what you're
And
supposed to
it
do.
actually was it's actually kind of fun. It kind of can work, but I also
I think it's the best of those
it's
plays,
the
and I
best
think
of
you
them.
can
I
do it.
think it's has a lot of humor in it with the Jack Cage
Yeah.
stuff. But I mean, it's like
But
it's
it's
also
good. But it's good. That's what students are supposed to do.
yeah.
Go do that. But it's not commercial.
No, no, and it's again. I think both of us probably know more about the War of the Roses than the average
Yeah,
person, and you kind of need to know a little Roman history here. Not a tremendous amount. I mean, you could
but
figure,
enough.
but enough that that you can make sense of these things. And I think also it's it's harder than the tragedies also.
Yeah,
I think if you screw up Cleopatra, which you could do very easily, the whole thing sinks. Like she's
yeah. I
a
mean, you can.
really hard character to play because you need a really rare person to play it. Not just who's good at Shakespeare, but who is uniquely sexy. And it's hard to find somebody that's a movie star type person, but they also have to have the verse capability. Otherwise, you're not getting through Act
That's why you
Five.
needed Elizabeth Taylor. If you got Elizabeth Taylor in this, that would have been cool. She can do it. You don't think so?
I think so. Maybe. I mean, I see how well she does with the verse, but I
True.
mean, she played Cleopatra, but just not this Cleopatra.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Um,
She played the
yeah,
similar concept.
yeah, but somebody like Elizabeth Taylor would be great. And if you think of like modern really appealing actresses that people find deeply sexy or deeply intriguing. I mean, somebody like Angelina Jolie, but can she do the verse? I
You
don't
should get like a
know.
Zendaya kind of thing, like like I don't know
Yeah.
if she could do the verse, but like that's the kind of character you want, though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, somebody who has that kind of
She has that
otherworldly.
appeal. She
Mm,
has that otherworldly appeal. Like if she could do the verse, she'd be great at it. She'd be
yeah.
That's the kind of role she'd be good. Or an Angelina Jolie. They just have that. Yeah, you could get those ones to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw Zendaya in Dune and was she
I
had
don't think I've seen
trouble
her in anything.
she had trouble handling the verse in Dune. So I think
Okay,
that
fair enough. I don't think I've
maybe
ever seen her in. I don't know if I've just seen. Have I seen her in anything?
you
Oh, I
saw her in The
saw.
Greatest Show
I was just
whatever.
gonna say The
Yeah.
Greatest Showman. I mean, that movie's a bad movie anyway. I don't think I've ever seen her in anything else, but she seems to have that quality though, like just that other, as you say, the otherworldly beauty, where you could, if she could handle the verse and she could do it, then she'd pull it off. Like an Angelina Jolie, like a, I mean, I'm dating, like a Halle Berry could do it. Like those kind of characters where they just have this sort of beauty that you're like, yeah, that person can pull it off. They have the charisma, they have the thing. I don't know if they could pull the acting chops with the verse, but those are the
They're
kind
the
of people
right
you
type
need.
of person,
They're the
yeah.
right type of person who can pull off that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
You couldn't have a Victoria's Secret model do it or something
no,
like that because that's a generalized beauty. That's the whole point of
yeah,
being a model is you are the ideal. You're not a specific instantiation of the ideal. And that's what you need with Cleopatra. They actually Cinnabarbarus mentions at one point a sort of flaw in her that makes her all the more attractive. It's actually speaking of supermodels, it's the what's her name? With the mole, the famous model who had the mole from the 90s. I can't remember her name
no.
now. But she was a famous model who had a mole, and it made her all the more appealing because she had this flaw, the supposed flaw. But everybody's like, oh, that's actually very, very sexy. That's what I think of with her, because of that mentioning of that, like actually she does have a physical flaw, and it just creates more of an appeal. She's also very good at self-dramatizing, right? She gets how to deal with an audience and how to make an audience and how to be the center of attention. And so that's another thing. She's you need somebody who's also comes off as very, very smart. I think that's something
Yeah,
that's missing here. This woman seems like childish and stupid. And I think it's easy to make Cleopatra look stupid. Because like when she hears about Antony getting married, her hissy fit it isn't a hissy fit. It's a rage against against this.
it's a volcanic eruption.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what you're supposed to see. I mean, you're just
Yeah,
supposed to go, whoa.
yeah. But in this, she comes off as just kind of dumb. Like she comes off as childish in that scene, and that's something your actor needs to do too. Your actor needs to be like kind of powerful in order to play this role, and it's really really hard. I mentioned it's kind of like it's not exactly as interesting, I think, a role as Hamlet or something
I
like
was just
that,
gonna say it's
but it's
like
probably
it's
as
like the
hard as it.
yeah, it's probably I don't is it as it's not as I don't know if actually it could be a really interesting role. There's a lot going on here. It might not be as interesting as Hamlet, but this is probably the best equivalent you're gonna get from Shakespeare for a female lead is probably Cleopatra. She's probably the closest equivalent to Hamlet. Like in terms of difficulty, in terms of range, in terms of as but it's just sort of like no one does it. I don't know, maybe it's just too hard. It's too
Yeah,
hard.
maybe it is, and it's also not a showpiece for any one individual. Well, Hamlet has become kind of the testing ground for actors. Like, are you a real actor? Can you do Hamlet? And then
Yeah.
every Brit strodes up and does it. But yeah, maybe that's it. And maybe we'll see a better Antony and Cleopatra in the future. Um, better film version at some point.
This is a bad movie. Just bad in a boring sense. Not even bad. Not bad, except for
The
the shield
Shield
lit the
thing.
shield thing, which was uproarious, but most of
Yeah,
it's just total just boring.
it
Oh,
is
so
boring.
boring.
Yeah, yeah. This is a painfully boring movie, ladies and gentlemen. It's about 2.5 hours long too, so you will certainly check out. Um, Anything else we have to say about Charlton Heston, Brian Blessed's wonderful wife, Antony and
Well,
Cleopatra?
hopefully she's a very charming lady, and she probably was, but I don't know. But
They apparently had been married from 1978 to her passing 2
And
years
again,
ago.
this might have been Heston
Yeah,
just poorly directing it and giving her nothing to work off of.
yeah.
Although they don't have that many scenes together, but it could have just been Heston's poor direction. It could have been just bad role for her. I don't know.
If you enjoyed Antony and Cleopatra, check out these adaptations. The 1908 J. Stewart Blackstone silent film, it's about 10 minutes long. We have the 1913 Italian silent film directed by Enrico Guazzoni, which was, I think, like a 10 reeler or something. It's a full length movie. There's Kanake, the 2001 Indian Malayalam language film. There is Zulfikar, a 2017 Indian action crime drama that adapts both Julius Caesar and Antony and Cleopatra into a single 138-minute film. You can rate and review this show anywhere fine podcasts are available. For those viewing in YouTube land, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the Talking Studios channel for all our exciting content, and follow us on social media at Talking Studios. Check out other shows by Talking Studios, including Talking Pictures Trivia, where we explore movies through trivia, Keep Making Movies, where we explore micro-budget films, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games, and Get the Point, where we slowly reveal a movie poster and try to guess which movie poster it is. Got a question for us? Call the Talking Studios hotline at 201-467-8679 and leave a message. It may be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Adapt It, wherever fine podcasts are found. Join us next time when we discuss Othello, the play from 1603, as well as the Olivier version, the Orson Welles version, and Otello, the Verdi opera from 1887. See you then.
Wow, Talking Studios.
Next week, we'll be discussing Othello. Pat, if you could play one role in this play, what would it be?
I mean, if I could, you play Iago. Iago's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's his play. Yeah,
It's his play. It's not Othello's play. Othello is just a toy. It's Iago's play. Iago's the great role in this thing. But I'm probably gonna be cast as like Roderigo and just like the sap who just like I mean it's just like I'm like, yeah, I'm probably getting that. Like it's just gonna be and just get killed and moan about how I'm ending all my
lost all my
money.
money. Yeah,
Lost all my money and somehow very quickly. But yeah, that's me.
poor you,
But
poor
yeah,
Roderigo.
yeah, I'm gonna be Roderigo. I would love to be Iago, but I know me now. I'm old. Like I know where I stand. I'm gonna be Roderigo. What about you?
I think I'd be Cassio. I think that would be a
You
role
could be a
for
good
me.
Cassio,
I
yeah.
think I'd be a good Cassio. Yeah, again, you'd want to be Iago. Everybody wants to be Iago. I should probably make a better Othello than Iago, though I don't think that's possible.
No, I wouldn't recommend that. We'll probably talk about that
21st
next
century.
week.
Yeah, but yeah, Iago is just a characteristic I don't have, and I think Cassio, there's a sort of brash earnestness to him. And I think I could do that. I think I could
Yeah,
pull
I
that
think you could do
off.
Cassio.
Yeah, I think I'm maybe a little more patrician than he is. I think that's kind of the point, is he's a little bit more of a brawler type, a little more of an upstart. But still, if I'm going to play one role, yeah, I think that's the role I would end up getting cast as.
That's a good choice.
Mhm.